Hello everyone. This is going to be a video tutorial of the navigation systems of the AN-24 by Felis for X-Plane 10. Today we're going to be looking at two of the systems primarily. First of all is going to be the SHORAN system, and the second item is going to be the NCNS, which is known as the Non-cooperative Navigation System. We're sitting here at the end of the runway at Kutaisi, which is in Georgia, a pretty good vacation spot for those of you who are living on the east side of things. We're going to be traveling over to Tbilisi Airport. There's a couple different airports in Tbilisi, but we're going to be picking kind of the big major one. Before we get started though, we want to actually figure out where we're going and how we're going to get there. So my tool of choice for this is usually a SkyVector. Some people like to use EFAS. Some people used to use SimBrief, things like that. But in this particular case, I went with this option because it's one of the simpler options for what I'm trying to achieve today, and it has pretty good charts as well. So as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward journey. We're going to be taking off from here. The wind, let's take a look here. Looks like it's coming out of the east, so convenient for us. We're already on the eastern runway. We're going to take off from here, and we're going to be cruising along this little point and landing over here in Tbilisi. Now, if we just wanted to take this trip, the distance is short enough where we could probably just climb into the airplane, point the plane in that direction, and keep going as long as we watch out for these mountains. But we want to make things a little exciting and give you guys a chance to actually see the different features of the navigational system. So let's go ahead and take a look here for any kind of navigational aids. Oh, well, we have an NDB here, which isn't too bad. We've got a couple VORs here, which isn't too bad. But that's too simple for us. So let's make things complicated. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to sort of an instrument flight rule map, keeping in mind there are some very tall mountains here. And let's take a look at what we have here. Oh, that looks good. So let's start off by trying to get to this waypoint here. Keep in mind we're not going to be using an FMS or GPS, so it's going to be a little tricky to get there. Takes us along this jetway right here. That's probably a good place to double check to make sure everything's okay. Well, we could go straight, but let's make it complicated. We'll go ahead and take a little bit of a left turn here to Gimmer. Then we'll come swing over here to Mukhrani and take ourselves right down to Tbilisi proper. Now, if we were on a GPS or an FMS, we could just punch in each one of these spots and actually have the airplane take us to these different spots. But given that we don't have that technology, we're actually going to have to come up with a way to figure these places out on our own. The first one I'm looking at is this guy right here, Tagar. Looks like we could probably use this VOR, but not complicated enough. Let's get more serious. If you guys remember with these different systems on here, we do have some VOR options. We also have some NDB options as well, but we're going to go ahead and actually use SHORAN. Now, the nice thing about this aircraft is it actually came with a database of different SHORAN stations around the former USSR. And if you actually open those up, it's a little data file that's stored inside the airplane. It gives you a list of all the different channels that we have access to. I kind of went poking around here, and sure enough, Kutaisi has its own station. It looks like it's going to be channel 21. So we're going to use that information in just a minute to set this up to actually allow us to go ahead and find this point in space, which is going to be pretty cool. I think you guys are going to like that a lot. After we get established to this point, we're going to use the non-cooperative navigation system to get us to this point, use it again to get us to this point. Once we get to about Gimmer, which is going to be kind of tricky because we're going to be basically estimating at this point, we'll use the Mukhrani ADF to lock us on, and then we'll actually, and we'll go ahead and use that to take us down to Tbilisi, probably by the VOR, but by then we'll probably be close enough to see the runway. So let's go ahead and get set up, shall we? Alrighty then, I'm going to go ahead and call up my handy dandy little checklist. This checklist didn't come with the plane, this is just something I did because it was a little easier for me to use. So let's go ahead and start from the top, shall we? Load page set. Alrighty here. First thing, we want to make sure we have enough crew, which we have, a couple of attendants, some folks in the back seat, and now we're going to come down to here where it says distance calculation. Now, one thing you're going to have to kind of get the hang of is that all the distances are in kilometers. As you can see, I've kind of got that pre-set up already. But we're actually going to take a look to figure out, that's going to be at 250 or so. We're going to take a look at the distance. 120.4, 120.4 comes out to be 222 kilometers. It's going to be about a half hour or so. So if we were actually to come down here and punch in 250, which is going to be kind of tricky, we'll round up to 300. And if the weather gets bad, we'll go ahead and give us another 300 kilometers worth of gas. Taxiing time, it's not going to be that long, but I'll leave that alone. Fuel reserve is good. So we'll go ahead and take a look through here. Looks good. Center of gravity is good. I'm going to go ahead and click on the load button. Now, I'm going to open up the load window again. You'll see why in just a second. My next item on my list is to actually set the elevator trim and the fuel counters, and I'll show you why in a second. So the elevator trim, if you kind of hike you down here into the cockpit, is right here. There's actually two settings for elevator trim. One is for the gear down, and one is for the gear up. I happen to be a fan of using the gear up one because I have no problem pulling back, but it's kind of frustrating when the nose of the plane goes shooting up on you. So I'm going to go ahead and take my little adjuster right here. You can see the little hand. I'm going to pull that down to 21. It's going to be right about there. So that's set. Next item, left fuel counter. Okay, now this is interesting. On this aircraft, this particular airplane does not have the world's best fuel counter. You actually found that you have a problem where it'll be showing almost half of the fuel you're actually carrying on board. So the solution for that was to actually build in a system to the fuel flow gauges to give you an estimate of how much fuel has been burned so far. All you have to do is dial in how much fuel you started with. Now the nice thing is we already know this value, which is 1,714 kilograms. So if we put 1,714 into both of these, it would give us a pretty high value, almost double our fuel. So we're not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my calculator, take 1,714, and divide it by 2, which gives us 857 kilograms. Now I'm going to take that 857, and I'm actually going to put it in right here. So as long as we don't forget to turn the thing on, this will be a better reading for the total amount of fuel in hundreds of kilograms per side than this little gauge up here will. And you guys will see that a little later on as well. So I'm done with this page. We're nice and loaded. Everything's good. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my checklist and continue. Right, fuel counter. Yep. Fuel quantity. I like to actually turn these 3 switches on now, 4 switches, because it's less likely that I'm going to forget to do it later on and really mess up these calculations. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. Serve page, prepare to flight. So I'm going to click on the serve page, and there's a button down here at the bottom that says prepare to flight. Go ahead and push that. Let's see, serve page, gear blocks red. I'm going to leave that alone for now. And finally, ground power green. So you can see our ground power button's red. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's going to give us access to the ground power while we kind of set everything up on the airplane. By the way, the aviation authorities have given us a full run of the airport for this particular operation. So, yeah, no traffic. Cool. Anyway, so now we have got ground power on. It's time to actually start setting up the airplane. All right, power source, ground power. So we're going to go ahead and shoot to the overhead view. Now notice, this switch basically selects the master where you're getting the power from. The top option is going to be for the APU. We'll use that later. The bottom option is going to be for ground power and things like that. We're going to go ahead and set it to ground power. You notice we get these 2 green lights here, so everything's working okay. So lighting as needed. It's a little dark in here, but it's not terrible. By the way, you can remove the yoke by clicking right here. It's a wonderful tool. Go ahead and turn that on real fast. It's not really that dark in here, so maybe not. So we'll go ahead and go down. Inverter PO750, inverter PT1000. So the 2 inverter switches are this one and this one. If you click this one, it turns on the PT1000. This one's for the 750. Notice it has a down setting and an up setting. I can actually click this down and get electricity. It's actually bypassing the inverter on the airplane. It's kind of a dangerous thing to do because you might forget to hit it back. So I'm going to leave it on the actual onboard 750, which works a little better. All right, fire system on yellow lights. So there's a big switch here in the corner. Good to go. ADF radios, set frequency. We're not going to be using the ADF radios primarily for this, but it doesn't hurt to set them up now. Okay, so let's take a look back at our little flight here. So it looks like our first point of interest is going to be LE, which is 353 Bravo Tango. We have the designation right there. I'm not going to actually worry about that, but I will worry about the 353. So if you've ever used this radio, you're probably familiar that you have to take this value and add it to this value to actually get the value of the station you're on. So if we're going to be on 353, I'm going to go to the next lowest value, which is 280. Now, if you grab your calculator real quick, that gets us a value of 73. So I'm going to go ahead and find 73 using this guy here. That looks like, there we go, 73. Now, I don't like to turn things on until the plane is going because you don't want to break anything. It's just hold over from the real plane. But I'm going to go ahead and click that anyway. You can see that the ADF level shot up and we're actually getting a pretty strong signal. Now, let me talk real quickly about these other options. The first option automatically points this needle in the direction of the station. It's fairly accurate. It jitters a little bit, as you can see. probably 90% of the time. This setting in the middle actually allows you to listen into the station to make sure you're on the right channel. This setting actually allows you to dial the antenna yourself. You got to kind of watch out for this, because if you get this backwards, it's actually going to be a problem because you'll be flying in the opposite direction. But if you actually come down here where it has the left-right control, now watch the ADF level. You can see it actually starts to drop as the signal gets weaker. This is a great way to really zoom in on something that's a long distance. And finally, Comp 2 actually gives you the same thing as Comp 1. It's just more accurate, except it doesn't know what direction you're facing in, so kind of watch out for that. I'm actually going to shut this off. I'm happy that it got our value. So it looks like our second value today is going to be Mukurani, which is 520. So again, let's see where our closest is. It's going to be 420. Oh, that's convenient, 100. Go ahead and scoot up to 100. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pick up the station from all the way out here. Yeah, it's kind of low, so I'm not going to worry about that just yet, but I am going to double check to make sure I got it right. 420 plus 100, 520. Good to go. So I'd say the ADF radio at this point is set up correctly. Let's go ahead and scoot back to my checklist. SHORAN RSBN. Here we go. Now let's get a little more serious. So without getting too complicated, this is basically a combination VOR, combination RNAV, or random navigation unit. These settings here treat themselves much like your VORs, which you guys are probably used to. These two settings here are a little obscure. You can actually dial in the distance that you want to be away from the station and take big left turns and big right turns if you're so inclined. Then finally over here is the calculator, which is the random nav option. I love this thing. So what we're actually going to do is use this to find a place in space, an arbitrary space, mind you, probably up here somewhere, and we're going to create a virtual radial to follow instead of following it from the center of this, which would be the source. So let's go ahead and get this thing, go ahead and check what we need. Frequency, mode, course. So our mode in this case is going to be calculator. Calculator means, without getting again too complicated, that if you will be following this course, this will be the angle away from the station, and this will be the distance away from the station. Think of it as a way of virtually moving the station using these controls. So if we go ahead and pop our view out right here, what we could do is we could create a virtual point right here. We could actually have it generate that for us. We could click there, and if you actually take a look, it tells us that it's going to be this heading. By the way, these are all true courses. SHORAN is always true. Remember that. So if you take a look, it says 046 true, 17.4 nautical miles. So we could actually use this and this to move this station virtually up to here. I'm not going to do that, though, because I have got a better idea. What I'm going to do instead is use our first waypoint as our virtual station, because we already know what this distance is, which is super duper handy, which is going to be 26.9 nautical miles, and we also know automatically what the true heading is, which is going to be 77 true. So we're going to have to take advantage of that, and we'll actually dial that in right now. So let's scoot back here. We're going to set our aspect angle to 77. Notice how high precision this instrument is. That's 60. Coming up on, don't want to overdo it, 77. So now we've taken the SHORAN station and moved it to 77 degrees. But unless we give it a range, it's still going to be in the same place. So let's see here. We're going to have a distance of 26.9. Warning, everything is in kilometers, so watch out for this. So we'll go over to here, 26.9, because it's 49.8188. This is actually going to be an important number later on, as you'll see. So go ahead and dial in about 50. And we're there. So that's about 50. We have to round. We don't really have a choice. So what we've done is we've taken the SHORAN station's original location, moved it 77 degrees, and then gone ahead and made that station 15 kilometers away from where it was originally, which happens to coincide with the first point. How handy is that? That's going to be important later on, and I'll actually show it to you when we get there. All right, let's take a look back at our list. NCNS, set course and mode. So I'm going to go down to the NCNS. Now this thing isn't nearly as complicated as it looks. Basically, you dial in the heading you want to travel out here. You dial in the distance along that heading you want to follow here. And this will give you the lateral deviation of that course that's showing you right on here. This guy keeps track of you in tens of kilometers. This one keeps track of you in much smaller units. Here's your drift angle, your ground speed in kilometers an hour, and your wind speed. So this is a very powerful unit without actually using the counter feature, which we're going to use quite a bit. But anyway, let's go ahead and figure this out, shall we? So now I found when using this, you can actually use it when you take off and turn it on right away to follow, say, this heading right here. But the danger you're going to have, and trust me when I say this danger, is if you tilt the plane a little bit too much when you do it, there's a really good chance that you're going to disturb the accuracy and you're going to have some real problems. Plus, this corner is an awfully tricky corner. We're not 100% sure where it is, and if we're off a little this way, there's some pretty big mountains here if you guys didn't notice that in the beginning. We really don't want to be risking running into those if we can help it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this line here in this course and simply use this point as the starting point and bring our airplane over here. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So let's go ahead and get our distance here. So that's going to be between Tagar and Ali. So that is right here, 113 degrees true. Again, remember, make sure you use true coordinates, and 28.3 nautical miles. So first thing I'm going to do is dial in this 113 to our unit. Okay. Unfortunately, it's not the world's most accurate needle, so we're going to have to kind of compromise a little bit when it comes to that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tell it how far along this leg we want to travel by actually loading that value in backwards, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's see here. It's a total distance of 28.3 nautical miles. No good. We have to use true. So that's 52.4116 kilometers. So now we're going to use this to control the bigger numbers, and we're going to use this to get a little more precise. So again, I don't want to make a mistake, 52.4116. So you can see this is 50 nautical miles negative. Now I'm going to use this needle to back it up 2.4 more. So this is going to be 1. I'm going to come around, this is 1.5. And what do we say? 0.4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're actually able to look really closely, this needle will be pointing right to 52.416. Now this isn't going to be our final value. We're actually going to modify this to set ourselves up for the turn we're going to be taking here at Ali. But I'm not going to worry about that yet. A good navigator would have this all worked out already. I'm not going to try to do that. Instead, I'm going to do it once we get flying. That looks pretty good. 52.4116. Good, 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 good. We're not going to be flying over the ocean, so I'm not going to worry about this. It's usually a good idea to turn the counters on, but I'm actually going to leave these off because we're going to use this information to help line us up with it a little later on. Everything else I'm going to leave off. By the way, this does not work unless the radar is on, so don't forget that part. All right, checked. Let's move on to our next item. GPS. Nope. DME set. Now, for a little bit of extra comfort, we're going to go ahead and use Kutassi's DME in order to make sure we actually hit this point perfectly. The nice thing about the DME is it's a nautical mile, so it's kind of a good little check to double check it. Actually, I take that back. It is in kilometers, so we're going to have to be careful with that. 113.6. So I'm going to stick my head up here. Oh, look at that. That was convenient. Good to go. I'm not going to turn this on again because I don't want any bad electrical loads. Perfect. Continue. VOR radios. Yeah, no. All right, navigational source. Now, if you go to the nav left page, you'll notice there's a couple different options on this page. The option up here actually shows you where the navigational information is going to be sourced for. That being said, it's going to be coming from this instrument, I should say, to this instrument. So I'm going to go ahead and actually select this to SHORAN SP50 to make sure I'm getting information from all this beautiful stuff we just set up a minute ago. Oh, by the way, we didn't set it up a minute ago at all. We never set the course. That's why we check, folks. By the way, our course is going to be whatever this is because we're going to be intercepting it up here. So let's see here. Takar, it's going to be 113. It's 113. Okay, and again, so people don't get confused, this is how we've moved the station. This is the actual course or radial we're going to be following at that virtual station. Sorry about that, folks. All right, anyway, this has all been set up. We're good to go, so I'm not going to worry about that too much now. So let's see what else we have on my little list here. Both the SHORAN set minimums. Now, minimums are a little tricky because, again, we're working in meters instead of feet. But minimums, I believe, are usually 60 meters. This thing's going to make a nice loud beep when we start it, but that's all right. Code set mode A. I'm going to go ahead and stick my head up. Here's our trusty little transponder. We're already on mode A. I'm not sure what mode D is, but we all know what mode C is. So being from the States, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at the VFR code. Leave it alone. Should be fine. All right, let's do this. Now, some people like to leave the chocks in and pull them out at this point, but I feel sorry for the poor person who has to stick their head under turning propeller blades, so I'm just going to use the parking brake. So the parking brake's right here. Again, if you want to make the yoke go away, you just click right here. Good, all set. All right, power source. We're going to actually switch to the onboard power. This is an important step because it prevents a potential disaster later on when this thing runs out of battery halfway through the flight. So click, click. We are now on the battery, so we're going to have to work pretty quickly here. Let's see, serve page. We're going to make sure everything's green except for ground power. Good. Navigational lights. This is also like the beacon lights. Navigation lights on. See, make sure the little light's flashing. It is. Cool. Throttles. This is a funny step. You're going to push the throttles forward so that this throttle, which is actually the APU/jet engine throttle, gets caught on this little slide right here. See how it stays up? That's how we know we're going to get good fuel flow moving into the APU in a second. Vibration monitor. We always want to make sure this thing is on whenever we have any of the engines anywhere going. We're going to go ahead and make sure the left fuel valve. We're going to set these up real quickly. We're going to go like this, like this, like this. And we're going to switch to the other side and do those three. These are basically the fuel pumps. This is the actual fuel valve itself. Looks good, looks good. RU19 valve. Scoot over here this time. That's a little valve down here. Just click it, wait for the green. Lovely. APU main start. We're going to look down here. Go ahead and open this cover. Click that switch on. We're going to make sure that's set to start mode. We're going to open up this cover, and then we're going to press for like half a second, and then let go. PT29 is opening. That's the starter for the APU. We have good exhaust gas temperature. Okay, RPM's coming up. And you'll notice that light went out, but we still have no electricity. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the generator, which is right here. So now we're actually on APU power, which is a pretty safe option. It's definitely going to keep us out of trouble. All right, what else we got? Whoops. Electrical load minimum. Yeah, we checked that. All right, folks, time to get started. So we're going to go back down to this page. Personally, I actually like to use this panel because it means I can keep an eye on all the instrumentation when this is starting to make sure we're not going to have a fuel fire or anything like that. As usual, make sure the area around you is clear. Start mode. Start. Engine to side. We're always going to do the left engine first. We're going to set it to ground mode. Open this little hatch right here. Click that switch right there. Looking pretty good to me. And now, when we're ready, I'm going to go ahead and press start. Little white light's going to come on. You're going to see a heck of an electrical load in a second. We're going to be monitoring this, monitoring this. Looks like our RPM is starting to come up. That's excellent. Voltage is really starting to shoot up. Same thing with the current if you're actually looking down here. Oh, looks like we've got a good start. You can tell by the sound. We're going to wait until this gets a little bit stronger before starting the other one. Looks good. Going back down here, we're going to go ahead and set it to the right, and we're going to do the same thing. Now notice, this is going to start moving down almost immediately as that fuel starts to get burned. This does not take into account APU fuel usage, by the way, so keep that in mind. Alright, looks like it's coming up. If we jump outside real quick, we can actually watch it kind of spin up. Awesome. Alright, now we're on the clock because the engines are running. So now we're going to go ahead and make sure everything's okay. Looks good, looks good. Torque's within limit. Everything else is within limit. I'm happy. Now to turn on some generators. Start up here. Both AC generators. Come down here. Both DC generators. Good to go. Alright, we're going to actually shut this off. You'll see why in a second. Now we're actually going to cut off the fuel to the APU to make it shut off. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure everything's safe and covered and all that other good stuff. Whoops. I'm going to go ahead and pop up the lid real quick. I just like to kind of shut all these switches off to like eliminate the chance of accidentally bumping into one during flight or something along those lines. You never know. Alright, so we're started. We're good to go. Now for the fun part. Time to start turning things on. I'm going to turn on window heat. We might get some icing today. Go ahead and take a look. Interlock brakes. Nice to have. Scoot over to this side. TSI on. GFC on. H1. Window heat was already on. I turned it on the other side. Ice detectors is right here. In case you're following along right here. We're right about to here. Turn that on. Whoops. There we go. Automatic heat on. Prop system we're not going to use. Pitot hits. We're good. And finally, bleed air. We're going to go ahead and turn those two on as well. Now we're looking like we're in pretty good shape. Okay, bleed air, radar. Okay. Now this is important. If you forget to turn on the radar, guess what doesn't work? Yeah, you guessed it. The NCNS. Alright. So let's go ahead and get everything turned on, shall we? Go to the radios now. Go ahead and turn those back on. Let's see if we got our signal because we set this up earlier. SHORAN. Click. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's turned on. Yeah, we're going to get a warning signal here because we're not on the right channel because we never set up the right channel. What a nerd. So I'm actually going to go look up that channel real quick. So we're at Kutasi. It's channel 21. So 21. Ah! Much better. Alright, let's go back to our list. NCNS. I'm not going to turn the counters on, but I am going to actually start it so that we do get some ground speed and drift angle information. Let's see, GPS, yeah. DME. DME is looking pretty good, 1.4 kilometers, good. View our radios. We're actually not using these, but why not? Navigation source, if you remember from before, we already set that up. Looks good. Let's see, altimeters. We actually have 3 sets of altimeters in here, so we're going to set them all. Make sure you don't set the altimeters until you have electrical power going to the instrument, because you tend to have little problems. I'm actually just going to press this button real quick while I'm thinking about it. There's actually 2 different sets of altimeters. One set is going to be in meters, the other set's actually going to be in feet. But we're actually going to have to take a look at that in just a second. Oh boy, there we go. Anyway, so if we actually go back to our sky vector, this isn't really a safe way to do it, but it works pretty well for us. Let's see here. QNH is 1013. So we're going to go over. Oh, that worked out easy. If you actually click on the info page, it tells you what it's set to. So if you don't have millimeters of mercury, you can at least use QNH. Let's see, 1013. There we go, 1013. Go ahead and scoot over to the other side here. Go and get this guy set. Looks good. Close. This one's already set, so I'm not going to worry about that one too much. Let's go back to our list. GFC. Ugh. We already did that. That's what this button was for. I just like to do it while I'm thinking. Uh-oh. GDI latitude. Now, there's 2 places you can do this. The first thing you can do is you can kind of float to the side of the plane like I just did. Or, which I actually prefer, is to bring up the right side panel like this, which we can then use to set this instrument up. That's this guy down here, by the way. This instrument, by the way, is a magnetic compass. This one is just like a directional gyro. It's a very sophisticated directional gyro, but it still has to be set manually. There's no quick button for it, and we're going to be using these buttons to do it. First thing we need to do is to figure out our latitude. Shouldn't take too long. Our latitude is going to be right there, 42 degrees. Go ahead and dial that in. Oh, that's lovely. So we're going to have to round down. That's okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to dial in the true course, or I should say our true heading based on true north as opposed to magnetic north. Now, we could do the subtraction, and we could, you know, look at this runway. We could do a chart and everything like that. That's kind of dangerous. I want this to be accurate, so what I'm actually going to do is cheat here. There we go. Pitch roll and headings. And you can see our true heading is 80.49 degrees. It's going to take a minute. So you can see by clicking this to the left, this needle is now shooting this way. And so it's going to go round and round as it tries to find the signal. It's never going to find it. That's all right. We're going to be our first heading is going to be 113 true, 108 degrees. So I'm actually going to set that up right now. 2 things at once, never safe. little bit. We said 80 degrees, I think. 80.49. Come on. That's good. Sweet. Make sure you click this switch back on, by the way, or this is going to work too well. Anyway, so remember, our first actual course piece is going to be located right in here. So let's see, the actual heading for this is going to be 113 true, 108 magnetic. So I'm going to go ahead and dial that in. Yeah, I probably should have done that a minute ago, but that's all right. Let's see, that is 108-ish. And this has to be, again, true course. Watch out, 113. This is also the same thing we set, if you remember a little while ago, and this guy right here. No coincidence, and you'll see in a second. Perfect. All right. No coincidence, by the way, that you notice this needle and this needle are about in the same place. If they're not, usually it means you set one a little off, which is actually making me a little nervous right now, because that says 108, and that's, yeah, about 108. The other one's supposed to be 113. Yeah, that's right. We'll play with it a little later on, depending on how messed up it is. Anyway, let's continue. Set to true, we did that. On up, yep, we did that. GFC slaved, we did that a minute ago. Yeah, looks good. Auto trim, I actually like to get the automatic pilot kind of warmed up before we need it, so I'm actually going to set all these. I usually use GDI, by the way. Alright, that's good, that's good, that's good. Alright, before takeoff. Whew. Almost there, folks. Transponder mode C. Checked. Landing lights extend. We also want to put our flaps down to 15 degrees, which I'm doing right now. Good. Good look around the front. Make sure the lights came out. Yep, looks good. Down, up, pitch stop. Now, the pitch stop is just a way that basically prevents the propellers from going to a very, very, very fine pitch. It makes a lot of noise. You'll notice as soon as I click it off, it'll get a little bit quieter. And you'll notice that also in the air. Radar mode, we're actually going to put it to drift mode. Looks good right there. And we are ready to go. Okay, folks, so to quickly think about what we're going to be doing, we're going to take off, head about this angle, attempt to intercept our imaginary radial created by the SHORAN. Once we get to point Tagar, which is going to be pretty easy because we know that the distance between here and Tagar is going to be the exact same distance here, about 50 kilometers, which we can check either on the SHORAN, in this display right here, you can see it's 0.9, or we can check it down in this display using the actual DME equipment. We just got to make sure we check it, otherwise we'll have all sorts of problems. So we'll go ahead, we'll take off. We'll proceed, let's say about 35 degrees. Once we cross that radial, we'll line up on that radial very carefully. When we cross Tagar, we'll activate the NCNS. Now if you remember, we preset the distance, or I should say the length of this leg. Then we're going to set up our first turn right here, execute our first turn. Once we get to Gimmer, which I'll show you how to set this up once we get up in the air, we're then going to go ahead and take a right turn, enter Makarani, and then take a right and bring us right into Tbilisi. Should be fun. All right, here we go. Just like to warm the engines up just a little bit, get that rolling going. Whoa. And away we go. Some people might want to point out that I forgot to turn this on. I just fixed it. Actually, going to sit up a little bit so I can see better. We're going to rotate at about 200 kilometers an hour. Whoa, got a little bit of wind today. That'll make this a little bit exciting. Alright, going up. Gear up. When you put the gear up in this airplane, you have to actually do two things. You have to put them up, wait for the pilot next to you to actually call out that they're up, and then you have to disengage the gear by pressing the G key one more time. It's going to be a fun flight. Alright, I'm going to go ahead. Ooh, not quite clear the runway yet, so I'm going to hang on just a moment longer before I go ahead and move over. That's definitely going to be a pretty menacing cloud. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start my turn to about, what do we say, 035? Ooh, feel sorry for my passengers, but they'll forgive me. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the climb power because we're pretty much well clear of the runway at this point. There we go, about 68%. A little bit of trim, bring up the flaps. Alright, looks good. Again, I'm going to be using my compass for this part. We'll switch to the other part in just a moment. You notice that the needle right here is deflected pretty seriously, which is kind of what we expected, because if you remember, we have to kind of travel up to here to actually get to where that imaginary SHORAN course actually is. Looks pretty good. Have a little bit of trim. I kind of like the climb on that line right there. Ooh, bouncy. Go ahead and grab an automatic pilot. Go ahead and engage it. Perfect. We're going to be climbing to an altitude of about 3,000 meters, which should get us clear of those mountains. But if those clouds are going to be that menacing, we'll go ahead and pick a different thing. Makes it exciting, doesn't it? X-plane weather, ladies and gentlemen. Sort of like New England weather. If you don't like it, wait 5 minutes. Getting jumbled around pretty good, so that should make this a pretty exciting flight for everybody. We're crossing 1,000 meters. Normally you wait to about 3,000 meters to shut off your landing lights. I'm just going to do it now. Might as well put the yoke back and watch the automatic pilot struggling. It's a pretty good rate, pretty good climb. Now, I'm not really going to need to do anything right away until this needle actually starts wiggling. Then we're going to have to jump into action. But as you can tell by our distance measurements and all that, we got a little ways to go, so you guys can relax. Ooh, we're definitely going to be drifting quite a bit today, so that's going to make this a little harder than usual, but hey, I like a challenge. I wonder where people live around here. It seems kind of empty. It's a good idea to kind of keep an eye on everything, make sure everything's working the way it should. Did we turn everything off? Did we turn everything on? There's quite a bit going on in this airplane, which explains why the crew is usually bigger than, one. You can see we have an ADF here, which has responded. We're not actually going to be using this ADF to travel, but it's kind of a neat way to kind of check your accuracy, and all good navigators really should be using more than one system to navigate anyway, so it's good for our purposes. Technically, by the way, when this needle is pointing, let's see, whatever this heading right here is, which we found out, by the way, this is magnetic now, kind of tricky. What do we have, 108? When this points towards 108 or so, this should actually technically be the point where we need to be completely rotated onto this radial. So we'll have to see if that comes out that way. It looks good here. You can see my imaginary comrades. It's going to be a bumpy flight. Alright, we're crossing 2,000 meters, which is just about on schedule. You can see there's some very menacing mountains waiting for us. Fans of the DCS series probably know all about this area, but I chose it because it's, good in the frames, good in the eyes. Go ahead and take a look at our distance. We're 20 kilometers away from Kutaisi. Remember, 50 kilometers is going to be where we turn in the NCNS, but we'll get to that in a minute. All right, climbing at just about through. Actually, yeah, we might be a little steep. It's kind of bumpy after all. That feels a little better. You really don't want this needle going past 6. Because that's a pretty steep climb, and you really don't want to have that one gust that picks you up and dumps you, and all of a sudden you're stalling, especially when you're carrying passengers. It's kind of like a mohawk. But there's some really good skiing in this area. Nah, that's much better. 25 kilometers. We're about halfway to that point. But remember, we're not actually flying to Tagar. We're flying to in here and returning towards Tagar to line us up with this to allow our NCNS to take over. If we see this needle move at all, that means we're very, very close. So we have to kind of keep an eye out for that. You can see we're about 26 kilometers on the DME, so we're doing pretty well so far. You can also kind of use this little needle right here to sort of track our progress. Once this needle is pointing about right here, it's probably a good sign that it's ready to go. Uh-oh, we're getting needle movement. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my automatic pilot. I'm going to start tilting us into that, because right now we're almost at a 90-degree angle to where we need to be. You don't want to over-tilt the plane when you do this. By the way, we have about 200 meters to go in our climb. This plane does not turn at the same time as level off, so kind of be aware of that. I'm actually going to start kind of fake descending here to get us a little ready for that turn. Alright. Looking pretty good. I don't really want to come too far into it until we get a little closer, at least within 10 degrees. That looks good. So again, we're just a little to the right of where we need to be, and we're kind of pointing towards it. Realistically, the reason why I'm stopping now is because I want to give the aircraft some time to level off. Oh boy, here we go again. Go ahead and level this off. A little short. And once the green light turns on, we're going to finish our turn over to our heading, which is going to be about 108 or so. That looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up my turn here. Again, theoretically, if there was no drift, which I guarantee you there's plenty of it, all we would have to do is turn just a little bit, but we're really going to have to crank on it. Looks pretty good. Again, our course is slipping to our right a little bit. That is our random navigation course. That's not an actual course. That is the power of the SHORAN system. Go ahead and cancel out that turn. And now we're going to do the best we can to go ahead and get that thing as close to the center as we can before we engage our non-cooperative navigation system. Now remember, if we want to go to my map real quick, we are right about here. We want to wait until we get to this point, which is 50 kilometers away from here, to turn that thing on. So let's see how we're doing. Whoop, overdid it a little bit. We must be getting some crosswind. Let's take a look. Yes, we are actually. So we need to turn into that course just a little bit more. No, a little more than that. Sorry, passengers. Now, one thing you want to know was when we use the NCNS, make sure that this is pointing towards where you want to be going on the NCNS before you get there, because you're going to find that you're going to have a quick, very quickly escalating bias. By the way, we're going to reduce our speed to cruise power, which is about 52% power right over here. Alright, we're doing okay. Distance is 37. So we're going to be engaging our NCNS in just a moment. So here we go. Hopefully we get this a little bit more centered before we get there so we know we're a little bit more lined up. Then we're going to have to work very fast to prepare for the next waypoint. By the way, if you take a look at the ADF, you can see it slightly to our right, which, no coincidence, is exactly how much we're drifting. Not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, we're looking pretty good. Go ahead and put my SHORAN back up here. 40 kilometers. We're getting close. And again, the SHORAN is what we're measuring from. We're not measuring from the DME. They could be slightly off, which can make all the difference in the world if you're not careful. Oh, look at how close that is. Alright, double check. High volt is on. Counters are off. Don't even think about pushing that counters button until that says 50. We're going to check one more time just in case. 26.9. 26.9. It's close to 50. 43 nautical miles. We are actually drifting a little bit too far to the other direction now. Very gentle turn. Back towards it. Try to get this thing a little bit more centered before we switch over to the NCNS. 45 kilometers. We can actually use the SHORAN system to get us all the way to Tbilisi. We're not going to, because that's pretty extreme. Ooh. We're actually drifting just a little bit the other way, so I'm going to be kind of just a little bit of finagling. Normally I like to fly the plane by hand, but in this particular case, I need all the hands I can get because how complicated this stuff is. Alright, looking out the window, making sure everything looks good. There's no mountains in our way, always nice. You'll actually see this move quite a bit during this trip. Alright, no pressure, no pressure. We are almost 100% perfectly on track, which is actually kind of rare for me, but that's alright. Good example. Okay, that's centered. Means our drift angle is correct. Oh man, we got this. Almost there. and boop, 50 kilometers. So before we get confused, let's go ahead and zoom out and see what we've done. We've used the SHORAN system to get us from here to this point here on an imaginary course. You can actually see how incredibly accurate our calculations were. We're almost at point Tagar. We're just a little shy, which isn't too big of a deal. Close enough for government work is what I would say. And as soon as we hit this point, since we took so much time to get lined up here, we're going to be able to use that point as our starting point for our NCNS to get to this point. And then we're going to have to get ready for this point as soon as we do it. Go ahead and do that. So all I need to do now is to reach here and click on the switch. That's it. We are now on the NCNS system. Notice this needle is going to stay the same. I never changed it. So the way this works is this needle here now tells us how long our leg is. You can see it's just like we said it at the beginning. This needle here tells us how far close we are to that course. See how it's kind of drifting left? We're actually going to turn the plane slightly to the right to bring that center closer to the middle. This is literally how many meters or kilometers we're off our actual course line. So that looks pretty good right now. So I'm pretty confident in that. I'm not too concerned. But what we do need to do, and I'm going to rush a little bit here, is to figure out where this point is, which we already know distance-wise, but how hard and when to turn the plane to get towards Gimmer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a look right here. So it looks like to go from Tagar to Gimmer, to Ali rather, my bad. It's going to be, we got that all worked out. So Ali to Gimmer is going to be 101 degrees true. Gotcha. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the NCNS. Ah, perfect. We got pretty lucky. And now I'm going to set up a pre-built-in bias where we're actually going to dial in how big our turn is going to be into these two gauges so that when we turn, these gauges read 0 when we hit the point of the turn. Now to calculate that, we pull out this guy. Nope, just kidding. Fortunately, Felis gave us this thing to make it easier. Now the way this works is we dial in the course that we're approaching the point at, the course that we're leaving the point at, the bank angle. This is always 10 degrees or less, by the way, because if we use anything more than that, we tilt the plane so much the NCNS stops working. Kind of a problem. And here is our true airspeed. Lucky for us, true airspeed's right down here on this needle. That's 480. If you're curious about ground speed, by the way, it's right here. So 480. Go ahead and dial that in first. Now, if you remember, course 1, we actually had to take it right off of here. It was 113 degrees true. Ooh, go a little quicker than that. Ooh, I see how it is. 113 true. Again, you can get that right off here. Our next course is going to be 101 degrees true. Let's go ahead and take a look at the NCNS. I want to make sure we're not drifting. We're actually about 5 meters off course. I think that's close enough. That's enough. All right. So now these numbers are how big of a turn we are. This number is how close to the turn that we have to start our turn. In this case, it's a little over a kilometer. This is how much of a bias we need to enter into this instrument. This is how much of a bias we need to enter into this instrument. So 1.1 kilometers. So what I'm actually going to do is cheat. I'm going to pause. I'm going to take that 1.1 kilometer and I'm actually going to add it to this so that we're 1.1 kilometer closer to where we actually are, so that when this needle actually reads 0, it's going to be time to take our turn. So here we go. Ah, perfect. So now we're exactly 1 kilometer closer. Actually, we're 1.1 kilometer, you're right. There we go, much better. So that way we know that when this thing reads 0, we have to start a 10-degree bank turn to 100 degrees, which conveniently is on our left. Now, this is the fun part. We have to dial these two values in as a bias to insert into these in order to make sure that we pick up our next course at the correct location. So in this case, north minus 1141. Go ahead and do 1.1. It's close enough. And then south, which really I think should be east, minus 263. That's really 0.3. And now we're good to go. Cool. Let's continue. I'm going to go ahead and close that for now. If our true airspeed changes, which we should probably check in a minute or two, we should go ahead and double check that. But you can see right now we're pretty much as tight on course as you can possibly get. Again, I could be using that ADF, which as you can see, we're doing pretty good with that too right now, to make sure that we're on course, but we're going to pretend this doesn't exist right now. Time to enjoy some of the countryside. Yeah, if I stare out this window too long, I think I'm going to throw up. I feel bad for those folks in the back. Oh, very nice. Very, very nice. We'll look at the front real quick. Whoop, let's make sure we're on course. 15 meters off. Gee whiz. Looks pretty good up front. Looks like there's no mountains in our way. Once in a while, you see the red altimeter wiggle. We'll scoot over to the other side. Anything going exciting out this window? Nope. I know this is supposed to be the middle of the winter, but someday X-Plane will give us winter textures. Someday. Ooh, there's a sun in our face, isn't there? Fortunately, the sun in this game isn't nearly as bad as the sun in the real world, otherwise I couldn't see, but that's alright. Anyway, back to business. So you can see we have about 20 kilometers before we need to execute our turn, and we're actually slightly off course. So I'm going to use a very, very gentle turn. Now in the real plane, I'd probably just use my rudders to do this. By the way, make sure these are set up correctly, but you can see they're already in pretty good shape. Let's take a look. We're still drifting a little to the right, but it looks like we're pretty much on course. Oh, come on, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Again, you want this as close to 0 as you can, because any little bit of error you get here is going to be multiplied by how many turns you take down the line. So kind of keep that in mind. Looks good, looks good. For those of you keeping track at home, we're right about right here, slightly up to here. And if we actually take a look at the world map, go ahead and center on our aircraft, you can see we're doing a spot-on job. Thanks to this incredibly powerful instrument that we took all that time to set up. By the way, you can start this instrument from the ground. I just don't recommend it, because if you tilt that plane too much, you're going to get a bad ground speed, and that's going to cause some problems for you later on. Oh look, we're actually still getting DME information. That's pretty impressive. And even cooler, if you actually look at the SHORAN, we're still getting a reading all the way out here. That's perfect. In just 10 kilometers, we're going to have to execute our turn. I highly recommend you pause the game for that turn, and make sure you think about what direction that turn is going to be in. I know we're going to be heading to 100 degrees, so it's got to be a left-hand turn. I'm actually going to start setting up some of my instruments here. Let's double check that turn one more time. 101 degree. See, almost got myself in trouble. Looks good. The magnetic heading, by the way, for that is going to be 96 degrees, so I might as well just kind of dial that into while I'm at it. Whoops. Keep an eye on that timer. We're 5 kilometers away. We're within 13 meters of being perfectly on that line. By the way, these aren't 100% accurate, and the longer you go using them, the less accurate they become. This is fun. It's like watching a clock countdown. All right, 3. No, just kidding. This isn't New Year's. By the way, we got plenty of gas. 2 kilometers to go. No pressure, no pressure. Keep a look out the window. Everything looks good here. We have 1 kilometer to go. Remember, now had we accidentally, or I should say intentionally, had not subtracted that not a kilometer, I should say, earlier from the calculations we made on the phone, you would have had to have started your turn now. But since we did, we just wait until this gets to 0. Almost there. No pressure. Dink. So close. All right, here we go. Did we get it this time? Yes. Okay, so this reads 0. This is pretty close to 0. Our next turn is going to be 15 nautical miles. 15 meters off, which isn't bad. So now I'm going to click here to load this value in. What I've just done is I've made it so that this instrument takes into account the radius of the turn I'm going to need to make to get myself to my next point. So I'm going to go ahead and dial this into 101 degrees. Looks good there. Yes. This over here, I'm going to do the same thing by clicking right here. Now, I highly recommend you clear these out by clicking there and there so you don't accidentally double-click them. I'm now going to come over to here. If you remember, we're taking a left turn. We want to take a look here just to make sure. Left turn. By the way, if you were to look at our ADF, you're going to watch that needle swing around in a second. So 2 clicks to the left is 10 degrees. And unpause. Now, we simply wait until this needle points right at our new course. And if everything comes out correctly, we should be on our new course about the time that this guy hits 0. Watch this, folks. Watch how cool this is. Ding. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause again and show you the local map. Oh, yeah. You can see there's our radius of our turn, which we had to dial into our instrument. Not bad. Now, our next goal, by the way, is Gimmer. So we're going to figure that out while we're paused here for a second. Let's go ahead and make sure that's square. That's good. That's good. That's good. Everything looks great. Okay, to get to Gimmer now, we're going to be traveling a total distance. Let's see here. Oop. Yeah, we're going to leave direct. Good. To get to Gimmer, we're going to be traveling a total of 22 nautical miles. 22 nautical miles, if we go up here real quick, it's 40.744. So I'm going to go into this instrument. I'm actually going to dial in 40 kilometers. 1, 2, 3, 40 kilometers, 0.74. Oh, whoopsies. Watch out for that, folks. 40.744. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember that this instrument has been going already, so it's going to be slightly off, but that's okay because we're actually going to be taking that into account in a minute because we're going to be using this guy to get us in close and this guy to get us in all the way. So as long as we get close to this point, I'm not 100% too concerned with it. Okay, so that was 40. We're going to go back 4 nautical miles. Oh, too much. Now, we really should be subtracting out how far we've come from that turn we just took, but we're going to leave that alone for now. Let's see here. So it was about 600, so it's going to be 1. It's going to be 2. It's going to be 3. What do we say? And we're going to do a little bit extra. Okay, now in an ideal world, when this instrument reads 0, we should be crossing over this particular point here. But since I didn't really make that subtraction quickly and accurately, we're probably going to be a little off, which is lucky for us because we're going to be using Makrani in order to get us in anyway. All right, let's continue. Oh. You can see we're actually drifting a little bit, and you can see that down here. So I'm actually going to turn the plane into that just a little bit. That's probably enough to get us out of that. We're going to try it again. Keep that as centered as we can get it. That's better. Go ahead and cancel out that turn. Sorry, passengers. We actually have to start thinking about descending when we get there, but I'm not going to worry about it just yet. By the way, you'll notice our ADF, or I should say, is starting to show us that our next waypoint is up ahead somewhere, which is probably good. We're still kind of drifting quite a bit. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, so we're going to be using this once this gets to 0 in order to get us to Makrani right here. That's pretty good. All right. Looks like we're picking up some cloud cover, nothing too exciting. We're going to start thinking about our landing and our approach. Without getting too involved with ATIS and stuff like that, I'm just going to hold my mouse over there and see what kind of weather we're expecting. 150, so the wind's coming out of this way. We're going to be landing on 14. Let's see, QNH is 1022. So I'm going to go ahead and start working some of that stuff in right away. We're close enough on course where we can start to prepare. Go up to 1022. If you're concerned about conversions, you can click right here and it tells you the values. Yeah, that's about as close as we're going to get that. Cruise over here to 1022. Looks good, looks good. All right, looks like the wind has changed a little bit, so I'm going to actually double check to make sure we're not drifting anymore. Yeah, we're drifting a little bit. Let's see if that works. Again, if this needle is going this way, that means you need to take a right. If the needle is going this way, it means you need to take a left. I should say, turn opposite the direction of the needle. That gonna get it? That wind is pretty variable up here, which doesn't surprise me. Looks like we have about 1024 kilometers before we're going to be hitting that next point, which is Gimmer right here. Now, we could get our phone out and we could actually plan for that next turn, but we're not going to do that just because it's going to be easier to go ahead and do this direct. Now, we're still kind of drifting that way, so I'm going to go ahead and turn a little bit more to the right to bring that needle going back the other direction. There we go, that did it. About 20 kilometers to that point. And if we've done everything correctly, we should be pretty darn close. You can also actually take a look down here. This is going to start swinging to the right a little bit when we get to that point. And then we can start dialing in, we can start descending, and we can actually get ready for landing this plane. All right, looks like about 19 kilometers, or about 100 meters to the right of the course. Everything looks good. Camera is pretty good. Mach running, 520. We should probably confirm that we're on the right station. I'm going to leave that step out for now. Everything looks good here. We're coming back. Looks about 15 kilometers. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and get Tbilisi VOR all set up. 11370. So I'm going to go ahead and dial that into our DME. We're getting a reading? Oh, we are. And we're going to go swing over to this radio here. 113. We could actually use the SHORAN system down here at Tbilisi, but we're going to leave that alone. Whoops. 11370. Gotcha. What's that going to be? The course from here to here. Again, this is going to be magnetic this time and not true. 125. Go ahead and dial that in while I'm at it. 125. Lovely. We're going to actually set our source back to both. And we're not going to use that until we get quite a bit closer, so I'm not too concerned. Alrighty. Ooh, we're still drifting a little to the left now. Or the right now, I should say. Oh, no, I was right. That's good. You can actually see that this instrument's done a pretty good job keeping us on track, despite the little bit of drift, as you can see indicated by this instrument here. By the way, we have about 5 kilometers to go before we're going to take a right turn and actually use the ADF to get us to our last location. Let me actually jump up on the radio real quick, double check to make sure we're on 520. We're receiving a signal, we're good. We're going to use this guy for the last little part of the flight. Okay, we're doing pretty well here. What's that going to be again? It's going to be 125 degrees. Might as well set this up while I'm at it. Alright, almost there. Now be careful. Alright, it actually has to go around one more time. Now we are... Good. Okay, so technically, again, don't forget that we forgot to subtract out that turn. If I actually bring this up real quick, you'll notice we're not bad. About 1.1 nautical mile off. Not bad at all. By the way, if you want to keep track of where we've gone so far, we've done everything we've said. We've used SHORAN to get here, we switched to the NCNS here, used that to get us here, and then used that to get us here, all without any external navigation aids. Now we're going to go to Mekhrani, and then we're going to go ahead and take a right turn and bring us right into Tbilisi proper. So, looking out the window here, okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut the counters off. We don't need them right now. You can see we did a pretty good job. Speed, drift is pretty good. I'm going to leave this on because it keeps our ground speed in case we need to do any calculations later on. Oh boy. Now we need to start thinking about bringing this thing back down. Unfortunately for us, I see quite a bit of weather ahead of us. So I'm actually going to go grab my chart real quick. We are right about here. For those of you keeping track. Looks like there's a little bit of a mountain in the way here. Getting some warnings here. So we don't want to probably drop around 2,000 meters. But I will be giving up that first 1,000 meters now. It looks like our ADF is swinging a little bit to the right. So I'm actually going to turn a little into it. Perfect. Alright, let's start doing our descent. So I'm going to bring my power back. It's going to start buzzing at me. Shut off the buzzer. And now I'm going to go ahead and tilt the plane down just a little bit. Ooh, don't forget to shut this off, by the way, and then turn it back on if you want to tilt the plane back. Otherwise, it'll fight ya. There we go. That's a comfortable descent. We're going to go down to about 2,000 meters. And now, since we're descending and thinking about landing in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and throw on my landing lights. It's like to watch them pop out of the wings right there. And down we go. Check my ADF. Looks like I'm right on course. Ooh, that's not good. Looks like I've accidentally set the system in the navigation radio backwards, hence the big red light. If I click the switch, you'll now notice that the course, the tracking for the VOR has actually gone to our left, which if you actually take a look at the map, it makes sense. Since we're here, this course is coming out this way, we want to intercept it on our left. So you have to really, really watch out for that on this particular aircraft, because it's not automatic. Alright, looks good. The ADF is drifting slightly to the right again, so I'm going to bring us just a little bit more over this direction. That's better. Again, remember, this is our true instrument, this is our magnetic, so you can see the pretty good difference. Once this thing starts to move, we're actually going to go ahead and take our right turn to line up with it, so that it can bring us right down to the runway. So we're down to about 2,500 meters. Looking good, looking good. I believe there is an ADF there, actually. Whoopsies. On 285. Might as well dial that in while we're at it. Ooh. Oh, it's an easy one. $285. I'm sure we'll pick it up when we get a little closer. Ooh, looks like we're right on course for the ADF. Alright, this looks like this is starting to move a little bit. So I'm actually going to order the autopilot to take a gentle right turn. Not too much though, because I want to intercept it pretty smoothly. We're crossing 2,000 meters. Take us down to about 1,000 meters, I think. Those clouds look pretty nasty. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the outside air temperature is. Oh, lovely. Icing. Make sure our icing system is ready to go in case we need it. It'll give us a warning in the event that we do hit some ice. Speed looks good. Altitude looks good. We're just about starting to intersect that radial to take us into Tbilisi proper. And careful. As they say, stay on target. Good. There's a really big nasty mountain in the way. Ooh, whiteout conditions. Go ahead and take a right turn. We'll level us off at 1,500 meters. When you're leveling off from a descent, you make sure you want to push that button kind of early, because it discourages it from misbehaving. The icing warnings? No. No icing warnings. Lucky us. It's 1,300. Ooh. This is some pretty serious looking mountains up ahead. I'm actually going to execute a bit of a climb. Came down a little too soon. Air traffic control is your friend, folks. That looks a little bit better. You can see we're just about ready to intersect that radial. It looks like we're about 42 kilometers away from our destination. Yeah, it's looking a little bit more comfortable. I'll go ahead and level this off in just a moment. Really, really gotta watch out for the leveling off feature on this thing, because it really has a bad tendency to overshoot and undershoot. And that could have gotten us in a lot of trouble if that cloud was a little thicker. Especially if you see this start to go. There we are, leveling off. Turn back to cruise power. Double check that mountain right there. 5,000. What is that? 3,000. Oh, okay. Definitely going to be high enough to miss it, but we're definitely going to go under it. We're still on course, according to our VOR radial at this point. SHORAN and the NCNS are not being used. Very careful at this point, because this is pretty thick stuff. Getting any icing warnings, but I feel like we might have that risk. Double check to make sure the icing system is turned on. It is. Pretty dramatic, don't you think? You're 32 nautical miles away. Probably just crossing the edge of this mountain now. Exciting stuff. All right. Keeping an eye out. That's what we call instrument conditions, folks. I'm just about on the correct radial. Good thing we set that up, or we would have had a real fun time trying to find the airport. Ooh, see that? We just passed directly over the top of that mountain we saw earlier. So now it's going to be time to start coming back down again. John off, descend, shut the buzzer off. Down we go. It's a good time to set up for an ILS. Yeah, there's that big mountain we just crossed over. Tbilisi is directly ahead. I actually don't see... Oh, there we go. Let's see here, 1:10:30. We can do that. That was 14, so 1:4. There we are. Looks like the heading for that was 1:4, so we're a little off. So we'll go ahead and take a gentle left turn. Hey, guess what we just can see? Nice. And I'm sure that really, really scary. Whoop. Mountain just went over us. There's the lake. Just gonna keep on trucking right through. We're heading directly towards the ILS now. Nice change. Looks like we're a little low, so I'm actually going to level us off again. Looks like our distance from the airport now is about 17 kilometers. There we go. Go ahead and take a peek out the window here. See what we can see. Bring in a little bit of power. It's gonna be a fun ride down, that is for sure. Ah, there's our runway. Whoop. Easy come, easy go, as they say. Alright, I'm actually gonna take manual control of the aircraft at this time. A little easier to fly. There's our runway. I'm going to start slowing down. Now notice when you cut the power on this thing, it tends to get really, 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 really noisy. Ah! You can see our ILS starting to work. And now it's just a matter of getting ourselves under 300 kilometers an hour and putting the thing on the ground. Don't get it confused with this runway, by the way. Different airport. Pull the nose up just a little bit more. Try to get under. Gear down. Go ahead and drop it 15 degrees of flaps. Awesome. Swing ourselves around to line up with the runway. Now, this is a little tricky because the approach speed on this particular aircraft is probably not what you're used to. By the way, the runway we're landing on is the runway on the right, not the runway on the left. Watch out for that. The approach speed that we're actually going to be using, I'm putting the rest of the flaps down, by the way, is going to be about 200 kilometers an hour, maybe 180. And our vertical speed, since it's in meters a second, you have to kind of be ready for that, by the way. It's going to be about 2 or 3 meters a second. There we go. Bring the power back in. This plane, by the way, does not like idle power. It tends to slow down very quickly. Now we are set. Whoa. That wind is still quite strong. Distance to the airport about 4 kilometers. Oh boy, this is getting interesting. Keep an eye on that speed, we're coming a little fast. Don't want to damage anything. Alright, we're still pretty well lined up here. Easy. A little high, a little fast. There we go. Get that nose up, going real low now. A little bit of ballooning, a little fast. Yeah. I'll resist the urge to pull the power back. Easy. Easy. Gonna let it drop just a little bit past the threshold here. Alright, we are on the ground. Put the nose down nice and gentle. And we're here. Not bad, folks. Not bad at all. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and forgive me for my egregious flying errors, but I thought it was important that everybody could see what it's like to improvise as well. See you next time. And again, if you have any comments, or you can direct me in the direction of any really, really good charts for the Russian area, because I can find them for America, but not so much for this country, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, again, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. See you folks later.